And here we go. I'm Dan Schinder.
And I'm Steven Schinder.
And we are dedicating an episode to Tony Kaye's new release, End of Innocence. But before we dive into that, we have some comments. We always like to read comments and emails from fans regarding posts that we've done or other episodes that we've done. And we've got some comments from our Magnification 20 years old episode, as well as the episode that we dedicated to Dare to Know, one of the new tracks from the new Yes album. So Steve, why don't you read those?
Right, yeah. So like you alluded to, we have a couple of comments on previous Yesshift episodes. I'll start with this one from Brian Harris about the Dare to Know episode. Brian says, "Hi guys, excellent episode. Hope you devote an entire episode to each song on the album when it is officially released. I had commented on other forums that it is like a house solo, particularly Love is a River or The Headlands, which makes sense since they were recorded, produced, and engineered by the same people in the same place. I just wish there were more band input from the others." Yeah, I'm not very familiar with either of those, but I do get what he means. Like, if it's produced and engineered by some of the same people, it might sound similar. So,
But
and it's Steve Howe, so yeah.
yeah, but there is a question there. We don't, unless maybe I'm wrong, we don't know whether or not there was more input from the other band members. There could have
Right.
been, yet it still ended up coming out that way. I don't know, but that's something that we'll keep looking into as the album unfolds and actually comes out.
Yeah.
And thanks, Brian.
Yeah, thanks. I believe the writing credits for each song might possibly be out. I just haven't like memorized who wrote each one. Like I haven't looked at it enough. I'm kind of like saving it for when we actually like listen to the full album, if that
Yeah.
makes sense. But yeah, as for the idea of one episode for each song,
I think we'll actually do an episode dedicated to the whole album.
right, yeah, because I mean there is a lot you can say about a song, but I don't know like if we can devote like a whole hour or half hour to each. Like I don't know, because I
Yeah.
haven't heard the whole album yet, but we'll definitely do a full album review once it's out, and I'm sure
Like we are with Tony's today.
yeah, and I'm sure that our thoughts on the album will, like, after that, will probably trickle into future episodes as well, because it's not
Yeah.
going to be the only time we allude to it, I'm sure. So,
Absolutely.
yeah, thanks, Brian.
Yeah, thank you. And you also have another comment from the brilliant artist who did the cover that I love of Magnification.
Yeah, this is from Bob Seska, who says, commenting on our Magnification episode, says, "Thank you for the lovely comments about the album art. This vlog was such a fun listen. Keep up the great work, Dan and Steven. By the way, I was unaware of Roger's proposed artwork being rejected at the time. I only knew the band, not sure which members, wanted a fresh look that's distinct from the previous albums. At one point, they asked me to create an all-new Yes logo for the album, but I kind of slow-walked the request. There's no replacing that classic logo, so I merely adapted Roger's logo with the Magnification glassy treatment." So yeah, it's great on you, Bob. Like it's really tough to try and reinvent the Yes logo when it's so classic. So I love that you integrated it that way. And again, like great job on the album artwork. And he even like shared like his own 20th anniversary edition of like the album artwork on his Facebook page, which we shared on our Facebook page as well. So yeah, people can check that out.
Nice. That's awesome. And yeah, I truly appreciate that cover. I think it's as much a part of the music on that album as Roger Dean's artwork is as a part of the albums he did that for. So it's excellent job all around, really.
Yeah, and also for Magnification's 20th, I shared my review from a couple years ago of that album on our page, and Charles Wagner commented, "Excellent review of my second favorite Yes album." Wow, second favorite, that's really high up. I like how you made the connection of Tales from Topographic Oceans to in the presence of.
Even though he
Um,
couldn't say it.
yeah, I think like in the article, I mentioned, like if I remember correctly, I mentioned that like the whole ocean motif and in the presence of reminds me of some of the stuff on Tales. But anyway, the comment continues. It's in the presence of. It's my favorite song on the album, and I noticed that it appears to be a sequel to Ritual. Ritual is the longest love song in music history. I find that lyrically, the theme of In the Presence of perfectly fits right after the Nous sommes du soleil section near the end of Ritual. I love that so much because I feel that Tales from Topographic Oceans is the finest music ever written or recorded in all music history. Thanks for your insights on magnification.
Well,
So,
how interesting. I need to listen to those two. Thanks for
yeah,
such a
like
neat
back to
comment.
back. Yeah, I want to
Yeah,
try that too.
yeah, because I feel the same way about Tales, and I love Ritual, and I love In the Presence of, and now I'm like, I just want to stop record and just go to that. So I'll be back. And I'm sorry,
And we're
what?
back.
Yeah, that was cool. Good idea. What was the gentleman's name? I'm sorry.
Charles Wagner.
Charles, awesome take on that. I can't wait to dive into that and play to it that way. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So now we're on to talking about Tony Kaye's solo album, End of Innocence, which, of course, is inspired by a serious subject matter, the events of 9/11. And on the booklet it actually says like a donation of 10% from all sales will be made to the Gary Sinise Foundation, honoring defenders, veterans, first responders, their families, and those in need. So before, so
Wait,
you and I have yeah.
I'm sorry. Is that Gary Sinise, the actor?
Yeah, like I looked it up, and I
Oh,
know him best as Lieutenant Dan from Forrest Gump, but of course he's done like other
yeah.
films as
Apollo
well.
13, a lot of great stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Um. So yeah, this is Tony Kaye. It's being advertised as his first solo album, although in interviews he's been saying that like he'd have to be really inspired by something to make another one. So we'll see. But yeah, so I think you and I might have alluded to this before, but you and I were introduced to this particular like piece of music kind of differently. Um like back in well, we'll go into the specifics in a little bit, but at one point it was a YouTube video about 10 years ago, and that's how I got familiar with it. And it was only 46 minutes then, but now the album version is 77 minutes. So, yeah, but before listening to it, what was kind of your expectation of like a Tony Kaye solo album music?
So, uh, not at all what we got. For some reason, even with 90125, even with Big Generator, even with Talk, even with the stuff on Union, my Tony Kaye brain is still stuck in the first three Yes albums, and also the reason he left, which is that he wanted to stay with traditional piano and organ sounds and wasn't into getting into synthesizers. So, quite frankly, the album was a shock to me because there's a lot of, I say, electronica influence and a lot of sequencers and samples and triggers on the um, percussion. And it wasn't at all what I expected, but I'll get into how I feel about it when we get to that.
Yeah, and
How about
same.
you? You
Um,
same?
yeah, like before listening to it that in its first iteration, I wasn't sure what to expect because, like you said, Tony is known as the organ guy, but he really went like all out. And yeah, like it sound like people have made the Vangelis comparison,
Interesting.
and he's acknowledged that maybe there is a bit of Vangelis influence because he loves the movie Blade Runner, which he did the soundtrack to, and apparently he even got to see Vangelis perform in I think in a studio somewhere, because like John brought him to meet him or something, if I remember correctly. But
Interesting. I didn't know that.
yeah, like I heard this in Yes Music podcast's interview with Tony Kaye. Like there are some fun tidbits I didn't know, but yeah.
Right.
So before we get into the album, I guess we should sort of contextualize like what was going on in the music world at the time of 9/11. So Yes finished their North American tour in New York on September 8th, and they left on September 10th, which was the day Magnification came out in the UK.
Right.
And then this is where I did like a little bit of research. Like some people have said that Magnification was pushed back from September 11th because of the attacks.
But just one day.
But
That's kind of weird. I don't know about that.
Yeah,
But
on Forgotten Yesterdays, they say that Magnification's original release date in the US was September 11th, but on August 17th, Yes World reported the US release date was pushed back to October 2nd for unknown reasons. It was eventually released on December 4th. And so I did further research on this, and apparently the reason it was pushed back, according to the album's executive producer Jordan Burliant, was that they wanted more time to promote the album in the US and it was too late for other territories. And like the filming of Symphonic Live, I guess was intended to be part of the marketing in the lead up
right.
to it. And so to make up for the delay, Yes let American fans pre-order the album and hear songs from getmusic.com. And there's also this thing where I was using the Wayback Machine, you know, the thing that takes screenshots of websites at certain points of time. Like at one point on Yes World, it said the headline, "We agree, download and tribute," you know, the song We Agree for Magnification.
Yeah.
And it reads New York's Ladder Company number 84 and its rig Close to the Edge assisted in the September 11th rescue operation at Ground Zero following the tragedy in New York City. As a special tribute to all of the heroes lost in the aftermath of September 11th, Yes is making a download of We Agree, a new track from the forthcoming Magnification album, available to those who make a donation to the American Red Cross. This is being done on the honor system. Please help yourself to the download, but please make a donation if you're doing so. If you can't afford to make a donation, please give blood. So we'll get to what was going on with Tony around the time and in a moment, as well as this other thing. But that goes to show that like this was such a huge tragic event, and everyone was like rallying to make sure that like you know, like trying to help people. And
Yeah. Everything revolved around it.
yeah,
Everything.
like it was the first news story I remembered. I was not even 7 yet, and the whole family was watching the news, and we were told to stay home from school. Like it's unforgettable, and it's like shocking that it's 20 years ago and it doesn't feel like that long
Yeah.
ago. But
It's the Pearl Harbor of our generation,
yeah,
generations, it really is.
yeah. And so another a strange thing that happened was Dream Theater, you know, the progressive metal band. They released their live album Scenes from New York on September 11th, but they had to recall it and reissue it because the original album artwork had like it was like a portrait of New York City, but in the shape of like a flame. And so obviously at the time, like
Uh,
that doesn't look so good. And of course they couldn't have known, but yeah, like it's a great live album. I listened to it recently and was like blown away by how great it is. It might have been my second time listening to it ever, and I was like, man, I need to get back into listening to Dream Theater. But yeah, they made a good call reissuing with different cover art after that.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Cool.
And so Tony Kaye was living in Los Angeles at the time, and I'll just go ahead and read the background info from the Cherry Records website. So an album 20 years in the making, the first solo work from former Yes member Tony Kaye, marking the events and the journey that followed the world changing moments of 9/11. End of Innocence is designed to be listened to in its entirety. Featuring Danny Torchia, who Tony Kaye met in the wake of 9/11, who has written and performs on the album. Tony retired from Yes in, well, it says 96, but I think it's actually 95, and came out of retirement the week following the events of 9/11 and began to write this album. The power of its music helped Tony to process the day that became the end of Innocence. The album takes you on a journey from the peace of the night before to the emerging hopeful looking to the future. Tony Kaye met Danny Torchia in the week following 9/11. This album has been interwoven with the growth of their relationship. Danny is, of course, his wife, so they've been together for a long time. It says the artwork is painted by Roger Dean, the artist best known for his work with Yes and Asia. It was created after Roger had heard the music, and the images reflect the journey the music takes. So I guess that kind of answers our question about whether Roger listens to the music and then
Yeah.
makes the artwork. But what do you think of that whole
Well,
description of the album?
It makes sense, that there's a backstory. It deeply meant something to him and Danny as artists and musicians that were compelled to write something around it and pay tribute, which I think is lovely. We keep hearing Tony Kaye's first solo album, and stuck in my caveman brain is I keep thinking of Badger as his first solo album, but that was a band he was in, right?
Right. Yeah. Badger was a band.
Yeah, I don't know why I keep thinking of that as his project. I don't know why. I got to get past that.
Right. It kind of, I kind of feel that way with you know how Alan White has that band White, like it's his name, but it's a band and not technically a solo album. So
Right,
yeah.
right. Yeah.
Um
What's your take on all that?
yeah, I think it's a very accurate description. Like from the opening track, Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, you hear the like the
That's the
weather
piece of the
sounds
night
of,
before.
yeah, the night before, and then you, like through the music it does get intense during the chaos of it all, but by the end of it there's like the light at the end of the tunnel, like there's hope for people to head toward even after this tragic event. So I think it's a very accurate advertisement for the album.
Yeah, the arc of the music follows the storyline as described from the piece of the night before to hopeful new beginnings. And then there was a video on YouTube that you mentioned, the 46-minute End of Innocence video that was set to news footage on the 10th anniversary. And I didn't get to see that because now the video is marked private, but you saw
Right.
it. What do you recall from that and how it played out with the news clippings?
Yeah, so Tony decided to make the YouTube video once he discovered that he could use iMovie to do it. And I remember it had news footage of just New York before everything and then during everything, and then afterward there's like toward the end there's people, like, people that one would think of as, the heroes of it all, kind of celebrating what they were able to do in the aftermath of it all. Like in the during the song Hope and Triumph, I remember there was a montage of a few different people saying thank you. Obviously that's not in the audio of the new version, but that's something I remember very, very vividly. And yeah, I I remember loving the music even back then, but
Mm.
after that first, like I watched the video in full, but on subsequent listens, I wouldn't watch the footage. Like I'd listen to the music cuz I mean, uh, like it's not going to be easy for people to watch that news footage over and over, obviously. So I feel like this audio version of the album makes that a bit more palatable in a way,
Yeah, I
if that makes sense.
personally, and I'll get into this a little bit more when we get to the songs. But I personally can't watch the news footage. I just don't want to see it
Right.
anymore.
Yeah, like I know there were a bunch of 9/11 documentaries that came out recently because the 20th anniversary, but I just couldn't bring myself to watch them. Like I'm educated on the stuff that happened, and it's good that it's there for anyone who needs to be educated. Like it's strange to me that there are younger people who were not alive when it happened. Like it
Right.
really puts things into perspective. So
Right.
yeah.
Interesting. Do you want to go through the track listing, and then we'll go from there, give our own personal thoughts on the tracks that we do like
Right.
the
Yeah.
most?
Yeah. So I'll also mention which ones I think are new tracks, just based on what I remember.
From the
So
46-minute, like the extra 30 minutes
yeah,
basically that were added. Okay.
yeah. Like I'm pretty sure some songs were probably extended because I was like looking at the math and like that's the only way it could add up, I think. But there are a few that I am certain are new, and a couple I think are maybe new, but not quite sure. But yeah, I'll go through the what the track list is. So first up, we have "Twinkle Twinkle Little Star" / "Twilight Time." That one is definitely a new addition. It includes Danny singing on the former part of that track. Then we get 9/11 Overture, and then NYC Blues, and then Battle Cry, I think might be a new track. And then 285 Fulton Street. Let's Roll, I think might be extended on this version. And then we get Tug of War and Flight 11, which I feel like there might have been something like this on the original, but maybe it's been reworked. I know that Tony brought Jay Shellen aboard to work on that track. I think after they worked together on Yes's 50th anniversary tour. And then Towers Fall, I think is probably new. And then we get Sweetest Dreams, which I remembered a lot because it was like Danny singing. At the time, it was like the only song she was singing on the original, but now
And I'm
she's on
sorry, I have something
two.
in my eye, folks. That's why I keep, if you're watching the video version, that's why I keep doing that.
Right. And then we get Aftermath, and then Heroes, I feel pretty certain is a new track. And then we get The Battle, Hope and Triumph, Homecoming, and Ground Zero. So if anyone knows better about what the new stuff is, like feel free to let us know, because like I'm as certain as I am, I'm not sure how accurate it is, and I'm always curious like what the changes are. But yeah. So yeah, so how do you want to start by like talking about these tracks? Like where do you want to begin?
Let's start with our personal thoughts on tracks that we favor.
Okay.
And I have one exception to that I will mention in my list. So do you want me to go first?
Sure.
Okay, so ones that I do favor include NYC Blues is pretty much more along the lines of what I expected. There's great piano playing in that, and that to me is like, oh yeah, I hear Tony Kaye. Battle Cry, then it's a whole different world. And I like Jay's sort of tribal drumming. Again, that's where I hear either electronic drums or triggers. I'm not sure. I'll have to talk to him about that and see what they are. I don't know if they're Roland or Yamaha or samples or what, but I like that being a drummer. Fulton Street is my favorite. That is a big standout song for me. I just love the composition of it and the groove, and it is groovy yet electronic, yet it's got a nice mix.
Got the saxophone and it's very jazzy.
Yeah, I like that song a lot. Tug of War is a beautiful piece and extremely identifiable to my sensibilities as motion picture soundtrack-esque. Totally in that vein for a composer. And the one that I won't listen to is Flight 11. With all due respect, I don't want to hear recordings from the cockpit. I don't want to hear recordings from the stewardess calling in thinking that they're getting high. I don't want to live through that moment again, because then it just makes me flashback on the newsreels of when it all happened. And I just don't want to go there. I'll call me a complete weenie, and I'm totally fine with that. Slip me into a bun, slap some mustard on me, I'm good.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. Like, as much as I love the music on Flight 11, like, I don't know if it's the exact recording or a
It is.
reenactment
No, it's the
recorded, but
exact recording.
okay.
Yeah.
But
It's the stewardesses, the people whose voices got credit. And I don't want to hear that. No disrespect to their peril or what they went through, but I'm just, I guess, too sensitive for that. What can I say?
yeah, it's definitely not going to be for everyone. Um,
Yeah.
it also kind of reminds me, well, some bits of the album, because of the phone ringing and other things like the saxophone and some of the more psychedelic moments, like some of this album actually reminds me somewhat of Pink Floyd's music. I don't know if
Oh,
you
interesting.
got that sense at all.
I didn't. I'll have to listen to all it again with that plugged into my ear. No pun intended.
Right. Um,
What are your favorites?
yeah, so the ones that stand out as probably my favorites, I love Sweetest Dreams. Like the way Danny sings, it's
Oh,
just
sorry, I forgot to mention that. That's on my list, if I may.
okay.
Sweetest Dreams. I love Danny's voice on that. But I always have issue when a band or a band member of a band or
I know
former
where you're going with
member,
this.
yeah, has a similar title to something either they've done or the band they're in has done. So Sweetest Dreams and Sweet Dreams, I mean, it's too close. Like, it, does it really happen? And
It can happen.
it can happen. Tempest Fugit and Stairway to Tempest, Smoke on the Tempest, all those things that are
Hold on and holding on.
yeah, that just, like, really. But with all due respect to this title, I do love the music, and I love Danny's voice on that. It's a great showcase for her. If I were Danny, I'm a different Danny, but no matter what gig I ever auditioned for, that would be on my reel, because it's beautiful.
Yeah, it lives up to its title. Like, there are some things that are kind of chaos fuel in a way, but this is definitely Sweet Dreams fuel. Like this and Twinkle Twinkle Little Star might like uplift people. And I love the lyrics in the song as well. Like she sings, but inside I feel like crying through the night. It's just a little thread of hope I hold on to, a new beginning, a newer world. And that's really it right there. Like, terrible things happen in life, both big and small, but people try to still cling to hope. And that is very human, like being able to or being willing to still hope for a better
Exactly.
world.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I also, for similar reasons, I love the track Hope and Triumph.
Yeah.
Because it begins with well, it also has like some sort of recording about the life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. I'm not sure who says it in this recording, but after that, the music becomes very uplifting, and the tracks after that feel kind of like an epilogue. Like that makes one feel relieved. Like the final track, Ground Zero, kind of gives me a feeling similar to the end of John Anderson's solo album Angel's Embrace. It's an instrumental new agey album from the mid 90s, and it kind of gives me a similar vibe to that. Um, but yeah, in much of the other tracks, I do appreciate how cinematic the music sounds. Like it sounds like really good film score stuff, and
Yeah.
like the drumming and guitar work, and just the palette of different stuff that's done with like sequencers and synths and like all of that. It's just,
Yeah.
yeah, I feel like we get a good variety of things on this album.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. So where do you stand with the artwork? And folks, if you heard our Roger Dean episode for his birthday, you may have heard some hints of where this is going. But for those who didn't, and since we're focusing on this album, just go for it again. What are your thoughts on the album cover?
Right. So the album cover, it's very different from what we know Roger Dean for. Like, it's not landscapes or anything like that. It's it's the fire of very much representing the thing. I don't know how well it appears there, but yeah. But when I look at the way that the smoke is and fire are painted, it's like I feel like even though someone else could have been brought in to do this, I feel like the way that it's painted is in a way where only Roger Dean could have done it in that fashion, if that makes sense. Um, and that, of course, we also get the like Roger Dean font with the title and Tony's name, and it looks fine up close, but it's kind of hard to see from far away, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I hate to ever say anything negative, but I'm always going to be honest on the show and
Right.
elsewhere. But I don't like the artwork at all. And Roger Dean's my second favorite artist, my first being my wife. but he has had such an influence on me in so many ways. But this is just out there. If it wasn't that font, I would never have guessed he had anything to do with it. And Roger, if you're listening, to this episode, you'll know that those comments are a sharp contrast from everything I said on your birthday tribute. I just, I don't favor it at all. I'm sorry.
Right. Yeah, I'm fine with it, but it
I
wouldn't
understand
be.
what he's capturing. I just,
Yeah, it just wouldn't be like my go-to for like what's my favorite Roger Dean cover. Like it kind of, it's tonally different from what I'm used to. It kind of harkens back to, that first album cover he did, Gun, where it looks very dark and very sinister. So it feels
no.
kind of like, it feels very much like that. Um, and then throughout the booklet, we get, well, I guess I'm talking about the booklet now, but we get like these images of, sometimes I can't tell if it's the same smoke or if it's clouds, but they're like in blue, like different shades of blue, and also dark gray or grayish black. Um, and yeah, it's like I just gotta flip through it a bit. I don't know how it looks, but yeah. So
Oh,
yeah, it also includes quotes from people in recent history. Like there are a couple political figures from say the 2000s, I believe, and or let's say, and then there's also like some other notable people.
speak
And they,
just a little more into the mic so I don't have to fuck with the sound too long in post.
yeah, and
There
basically,
you go.
yeah, there are some quotes about the tragedy of that is, like what tragic event it is, and
Yeah.
how people need to be brought together, and um, for some of the like under each of the song titles, because it's instrumental, of course, there's no lyrics. Although I do wish there were lyrics for
Yeah.
Sweetest Dreams.
And
That's,
yeah, for Danny's songs for sure. I don't get that.
yeah, I don't know why that
And
like
there's no
it'd be nice to have, like,
yeah, and there's no direct credits to the other musicians.
right. We'll get to that in a
Okay.
moment. But yeah, like I would obviously we know the lyrics to Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, but Sweetest Dreams, I do wish the lyrics were included in
So
here.
did you ever realize that the melody to Twinkle Twinkle Little Star is the same as the ABC song?
Um, maybe like
Twinkle
sometime
Twinkle
in the
Little
past. Yeah.
Star, ABCDEFG.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. Just think the person who wrote that song wrote everything.
Yeah, and he actually just reminded me of something. That there's a part at the end of Battle Cry where it kind of reminds me of the "I Get Up, I Get Down" section of Close to the Edge, because
Yeah,
it sounds
that's
like
right.
dun dun dun
Yes, I
dun
meant to bring that up
dun
too.
dun. Yeah, um, But anyway, so getting back to this, there was like I said, under each song it'll sometimes say an event that happened. Like for the first one, it talks about what it was like the night before.
By the way, maybe Francis wrote that lick and both Rick and Tony copied it or something.
Yeah, Francis Monkman wrote all Yes music. Let's go with that. But under 9/11 Overture, it says, like, it talks about David Angel, one of the American screenwriter and creator of Frasier, and how he and his wife were both heading home on
More into the mic.
We're both heading home aboard Flight 11, and like Frasier is one of my favorite sitcoms, and I vaguely remember one of the episodes ended with "in memory of David Angel," and so
Yeah.
like Frasier is a thing that connected with lots of people, and so there's like little things like that where the booklet tries to pay tribute to certain people. Some names I don't really recognize, but yeah, it kind of tries to do that.
Cool.
Yeah, so I guess I'll get to the like musician credits topic. So for some reason it doesn't say who played what specifically. It does say all tracks written by Tony Kaye, with the exception of track 10 written by Danny. Track 10, of course, being Sweetest Dreams, mastered by Mayor Applebaum, and
who I've had on Jump Talk TV, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mayor does a great job at mastering. He's mastered a few Yes albums.
Yeah. And so under the special thanks, it does list these people. So it lists Danny Torchia, Jay Shellen, Roy Jacobson, Ken MP, Victor Alexeif, Jim Halfpenny, Alex Koff, and it also thanks Roland Keyboard. But that kind of makes me think that maybe these people in the special thanks all performed on the album, possibly. Like we know Danny and Jay for sure. And I did like some digging online, and I saw that Roy Jacobson is a bassist from the looks of it.
Right.
Ken MP, there's a Ken MP on Internet Movie Database. It lists him under musician uncredited for Philadelphia and Amos and Andrew, both of which came out in 1993. And Victor Alexeif is a composer. He has his own Wikipedia article from the looks of it. Apparently knows piano. Jim Halfpenny is a guitarist from the looks of it. And Alex Koff, if you do a Google search of Alex Koff, you will find Alex Koff background music. So I wonder if that's the same person. So yeah, I'm kind of leaning toward thinking
maybe the sax player.
Oh, right. Yeah, I didn't even think of that. So yeah, it kind of makes me think that maybe all these people contributed. Like, I don't know for sure, but that's my guess. Yeah.
That makes sense because they're grouped with the musicians that we do know.
Right. Yeah.
Along with Roland Keyboards. So.
Yeah, and we've heard that like this is an album from Tony Kaye and his friends. So like, yeah, it just makes sense that it would be them. And on the back of the booklet, it says, "In memoriam for all 2,997 lives lost, 11th September 2001." And it mentions the foundation, like I mentioned earlier. But yeah, so overall, the booklet has some stuff that adds some context. But like I said, I just wish it had the lyrics and more info on who played what. I don't know if it's a thing where you can only have a certain amount of pages to fit it in the case or what, but
character count reached its limit.
Yeah, maybe. And here's how the disc.
Oh, that's cool. It's got a tray with the artwork behind it. I like that style. That's cool.
Yeah. And that's how the back looks.
Cool.
It doesn't say how long each track is, but
that's also interesting, folks. I forgot to mention this. Please chime in with anything we've discussed. If you have it, if you've heard it, give us your take. What are your favorites? Was it a surprise? Was it what you expected? Let us know what you think of the playing and of the music and the production and the cover art. And the big question that Steve asked in our notes is, could Tony Kaye make another solo album? And what do you mean by that when you say could he? I mean, obviously he has the ability to.
Right.
Are you asking, do we think he will, being that it took so long for this first one and it took such a momentous thing to happen to inspire him? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, like I basically just put down that question without thinking specifically what I mean.
I would love to hear more Tony Kaye music. When I was young, and in 1975, when all the Yes members put out their own solo albums, I thought that was weird. You know, there weren't a lot of musicians doing that at the time that were in a band. You know what I mean? And I thought that was weird. But as I got a little older, and now that I'm much older, I would love to hear more and more and more solo work by different musicians of different bands, and really sort of relate to their more zeroed in musical sensibilities and go, I hear traces from that band's album that they're in that they did, but yet this is I think it's fun to do. I love that stuff. Steve Howe has put out a lot. Obviously, Rick Wakeman has put out a lot. Bill Bruford and Patrick Moraz put out a couple together. They were never in Yes together, which is cool, but they put out a couple drums and piano albums together. And Chris Squire only did the one. Him and Billy had some two.
Yeah, like Swiss Choir, that holiday one.
Yeah. That's right.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny. Like Chris, obviously, Fish Out of Water came out 75, and then in that Yes Years documentary, which was filmed in 91, he was like, "Yeah, that was my first solo album. I'm thinking of making another one next year." And of course, like the year after that, he did the Chris Squire Experiment, and that evolved into Conspiracy eventually. So it became more a Squire Sherwood joint effort as opposed to just a solo thing. And it wasn't until 2007 that he released that holiday album, Chris Squire's Swiss Choir.
Right.
I guess because he was just mostly focused on Yes, which is still admirable, but I love hearing the solo stuff as well.
Oh, definitely. And Bill Bruford has had several projects of his own. Alan White did the solo album Ramshackled. There's been some great stuff out of that band, but we don't hear a lot of stuff like that from musicians while they're still in a band. It's usually after they've left a band or something like that, or maybe it's not even a solo album, but more of a solo project, like you mentioned, White. Like Ian Gillan had the band Gillan, from Deep Purple fame. David Coverdale having his own thing. So I just think it's an interesting dynamic. I'd love to hear more of it.
Or like Dylan Howe being a band leader a couple different times.
Yeah, absolutely. So folks, let us know what you think. Much more to come. We still have a couple episodes that are recorded and unpublished, and we still have some planned. If you have ideas for things you'd like us to cover, we've gotten some great ideas from fans. Brian Harris gave us a great one that we're going to do soon. And we'd love to hear your suggestions, get questions. You could put those in right in the comments of posts or wherever you're listening to this or watching the video version. And you can email us at yesshiftpodcast@gmail.com. And the dot is lowercase.
Yeah, and if you want to read this review I wrote up, like track by track of End of Innocence, you can find it on my vocal.media page, which I'll link in the show notes. I already posted it on our Facebook page, but
cool.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and do that. And yeah, like I really enjoy this music. Like it still surprises me, like each listen, even after all those previous listens, weirdly enough.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think it's because it's so not what we expected, which is great.
Yeah. All right. I think that's it. So, End of Innocence, maybe it's for you. If it is, let us know what you think. And yeah, lots more to talk about from Yesshift in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you for following what we do, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.